Everybody, it's Marty the JavaScript party and my buddy Rat back here, just doing some code. We're in a very weird place right now because we tend to be in something that people will like say a word and then hell. And the word is unit test. Cannot get this unit test to work. It's failing, and the reason seems to be that it's signals input and all that. So then you always have to wonder. So I was trying to work with ChatGPT, and it was acting like just with absolute confidence that it knew the answer. We went round and around with different solutions yesterday, and none of them worked. But it kept saying, alternatively, you could do this. Alternative, and I would just sort of blow it off, and it looks like I need to look at the alternative solution, and we'll see if we get anywhere with that. Um, we also, when I started today, I got this February 2025 version of 1.98. So it looks like we got some new up. It looks like my Visual Studio Code updated itself. Um, I don't know if any of these really matter to me. Next, edit suggestions preview, so I'm not going to turn that on. It's a Copilot thing. They're really trying to push Copilot. Agent mode is a Copilot. Copilot for notebooks is Copilot. So I'm not that interested in Copilot. Code search, let Copilot. So that looks like the top four things are Copilot related. Uh, Terminal IntelliSense preview, rich completion support in your terminal. So let's see if we can see this thing. Let's see. Did I get any? I don't see any rich. So who knows what that even means? npm start. Yeah, I didn't see any rich completion support in my terminal. So there's no telling what that means. Drag and drop references. Quickly open and peek references in a new editor. Huh, that'd be interesting to see. Linux custom title bar. Okay, so I'm not using Linux. I used Linux exclusively for about 15 years. Um, it's kind of it was just because basically what would happen is I would buy a Windows box. I would spend about 2 or 3 years using it, and then one day I would just get a blue screen, and it would be over, and everything was lost. And then so then basically the first time I had a blue screen one, I went and bought a new Windows computer, but I had a Linux computer. But I updated the old one to Linux, and then that never happened again. I never had a blue screen. Now I'm back to Windows, and I don't see these blue screens. Knock on computer, knock on laptop. I do think that what basically um, now almost everything I do is like if it's code, it's in Git. It's everything is. I have very little that is not reproducible, absolutely immediately reproducible on a new computer. So everything is. I wouldn't say in the cloud because the cloud sort of indicates like Amazon or something like that, but everything is remote. I have very little that is at any given time. Um, just exclusively local to the machine. It's either a GitHub or someplace like that. So, but anyways, Linux unresolved diagnostics preview. Prompt when committing with unresolved diagnostics. Don't know what that is, and that's in preview. So I think that means you have to turn it on. Soft delete in source control moves untracked files to trash instead of deleting them. That sucks. Um, So custom instructions in GA. Oh, here's another Copilot thing. Use custom instructions to tailor Copilot to your needs. So if then you can go online and read it, and then we're more Copilot. Boy, they really are. And see, that's the thing is like they can't help themselves, right? Like, um, okay, that's cool. Um, oh my gosh, that might be the that would be an awesome implementation of a game that should be pretty simple to set up that would be like really cool to see in like multiple views. So like you could see it in a 3D view, and you could have another thing that shows you like over the top view and stuff like that. I think that might be really cool. Anyways, let's keep going. Related UI. So yeah, so right now, like at the top of my list of things I'm worried about is like unit tests. It would be really easy to just get highly fixated on unit tests. That is how you let important things slip by. Um, they are changing the way this stuff works pretty big time, and they are really pushing Copilot. Um, and like that's what I was gonna say. Like, so Windows came out or Microsoft came out, and they're like, "Hey, we have this really cool editor you could just use. We're just giving out for free because we're just good people, and we just want you guys to use it. It's free, and maybe we'll collect a little data, but for the most part, it's just free to you." And now they're using it as a tool to push Copilot. Um, the same thing with Git. They're like, Git was this awesome thing that everybody could use, and now they're using it to push Copilot. Like they're trying to force us to do things that people obviously don't want to do. Like on my phone, there is, as a matter of fact, I need to figure out where my phone is because I can't log into work without my phone. Um, but in my phone, there's this thing. I don't. So kind of button, hit a button, and this AI is supposedly going to pop up, and I don't want it. Nobody wants it. Winston or something. I don't know. Some English sort of name, and then they made it to where, oh well, it would only come on if it came installed, but only if you turned it on. Next thing you know, they made it where the old off button was. You push it, and now this thing pops up. It's just like the overwhelming desire to get us locked in with AI is just terrifying, if I'm being completely honest. Electron 34. I would really like to get into Electron. I think Electron would be really, really a good way to do stuff. Anyway, so we did a quick look over on that. All that. So now another thing I kind of wanted to talk about was like I constantly get ads for things that will generate my unit tests for me. It's like unit tests to me are like the perfect example of it's not the destination, it's the trip. The whole point to writing unit tests is to teach yourself how to write code and to reestablish how to write code in a way that things are unit testable. And then while you're writing unit tests, sometimes you'll observe things that maybe aren't the way you thought they were, or maybe could be improved while you're writing it, not after it's written. While you're writing it, everything about unit tests is about, while, in my opinion, is at least for the developer, it's about while you're writing it. Why the heck I'd want something that automatically generates a unit test for me? I cannot possibly understand why, because while it will it will probably enforce writing things in a unit testable way, because the automated system is probably going to fail if you don't. It's also going to just gloss by glaring errors that are so obvious of things that you don't want, but it doesn't know. So anyway, so now let's try our new thing. And I've never done this before. So basically what it's saying is I should create a component and then run my component in such a way that it brings up. And it's a shame the naming that they did. So look, describe example components. So basically, okay, so example components, what I want to test. And apparently I'm going to do at component, and I'm going to create something called a test host component. So I'm creating that. That's step one. And then step two is I'm going to have it build out the test host component. and then I'm going to have it run that, and then I'm going to check to see that my test component has the right what I expect inside of it. And really, all I want it to do is just run, um, because like I think if you look in there, what you'll see is that it's not doing a whole lot, right? Like literally, all it's doing is rendering, and all of these individual pieces are all they are all unit tested themselves. Like the whole point of removing this when I do unit tests is to ensure that all the individual pieces of this, and I don't think there's any logic in here that I care about. Um, None of these things are like all of these pieces are all tested in their own right. So I just want to make sure that the unit test, that the component can render, that I haven't done something that causes the whole thing to just fail to render. Um, that would be my goal. And I really don't want, I actually want there to be less logic in here when I'm all said and done, not more logic. But, anyways, let's see. I guess this is, so I'm kind of treading lightly because this is a bit new to me. So I'm going to copy this. So at this point, I do not ever create a full-blown component inside of my unit test. So now I'm going to go down that path of creating a full-blown component. And then up here, basically, I'm just going to, I don't know what the right word for it is. Monkey patch a component. I don't know. I'm going to generate a component and the name of the component, and it's going to implement my thing. So so this is what's known as a decorator up here. And what this is telling it is the very next thing you need to decorate the next thing, which is this class test component. So it's saying get something, name it, that's named, this thing is a class, and it does test host component, and this is going to decorate that class with stuff. But I don't want app example. I want, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, app viz. So I wanted to generate a test component with app viz in it. Now this should fail without I don't know what's going to happen. Actually, I'm very curious. And this is kind of an example of like why I like to do the unit tests is I don't know what happens if I send it an ID that doesn't exist in the system. And what do I even want it to do if I send it an ID? Because I do think that that is actually going to possibly happen when I'm doing like imports and stuff. Like the ID doesn't exist in the system yet. So maybe I want to, yeah, I don't know what I want to do. But it'll be good to know what it does do. Okay, but the name of my input is not that. It's called stRenderer input ID. And again, that's a perfect example of like I love the number 42 hitchhikers. This is the answer to everything apparently. And one. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I think, what did I do? I lost my second. All right, so now I have created a new component called test host component, and then I'm going to create something called a fixture, which I'm not particularly sure of what a fixture is, but over here I created a fixture for my viz component. Apparently I'm going to go away from that, and and I'm going to create a fixture called so I was creating a picture of my viz component. Let's see, where does it const after? So this is sort of gets you, I guess, your component that you can test. So we don't want to do this anymore, which is going to break things for sure. And then what we do want to do is say let fixture colon, and I stayed with the same name. Well, it is it's a component fixture. And that's weird, right? Okay, so it's component fixture, and then it's a test host component. It's a component fixture of my test host component, not my component, but my test host component. And then, I guess none of this. So we have our before we and we have our await, but we're not going to create that. Okay, so we are going to comment that out. And I know we're going to need our fixture test changes. Okay, so we're going to want to do this await. So it's basically going to run a asynchronous call, which I guess testbed configure test model is an asynchronous call. So then we have to wait for it to come back, because if we don't, what'll happen is the next line will get run before it's completed. And I believe test configuration model must be a promise. It must return a promise, would be my guess. And then example component is not what we want. What we want is viz component. Okay, so, and we imported it up here. So basically we are going to declare that example component and viz component are part of this thing. And then we are going to create our test component, which in effect should also end up creating a viz component as well. Now the viz component is being given an ID that doesn't exist. And I don't know what it's going to do when it gets an ID that doesn't exist. And that is one of the best parts of this whole thing, is that one of the best side effects of unit tests is that you can actually test things that won't happen. You can easily test things that won't happen. Now, what they do is they say that component, what I'm doing, will come from here. That I'll get an instance of it because it'll be a child of the parent component. And I want to just name it component. Actually, I want to name it viz component so that to avoid confusion, viz component. And then I just want to save. So at least that compiles, and we'll see if it will actually run. Run test. Oh man, I swear one of the most difficult things to do when you're like trying to actually express in words what's happening here is not to just give some like lame explanation of something and because it's so tempting to do. So let's see what happens here. So everything compiled. Oh, it all. Nope. Oh, that was good. That was good. So I guess the fact that it takes longer is an indicated unexpected vis component. So it's saying it declared instead. So it's saying that that is that. So I think what it's telling me is, I don't know this, but I think what it's telling me is that this needs to be like this. Colon. Because it's a because viz component is standalone. And I never know whether to put a comma there or not to put a comma there. So everything still compiled. Now we still have a problem. So it says test host component is marked as standalone because these days the default is standalone. It used to be the default was not standalone. So let's try doing this. Move this down here. Try it again. Oh, so crazy. AppViz is not a known element. Use the test host component template. Imports. So that would absolutely defeat the purpose. So if I added it to custom elements, it would just not run it, which is not what I want. Okay, so one, if app is in Angular, then verify it is included in the imports of this test component. App viz. So I think this is app viz. So I think what it's saying is I need to do this. Colon. Can I do this? I don't know. I don't know if I can do this. And then I think it's telling me that when it tries to create the component, when it tries to go through this step, it fails. And then, so then the question mark is, do I need it here? So I've heard that Karma is, they've said that they've deprecated it, using it. So, but they haven't said what they're favoring in the future. They just said, for now, we're deprecating it, which is kind of a bummer because that means all this is gone. And now this thing just seems to be hung up. Let's see, what is it? It's 8:23. I have 37 minutes before work. It is Friday. I'm extraordinarily frustrated with work, but I think that's probably a good indication that I put in a good hard weeks of work. You know, by Friday, I'm sort of out of gas, and then I kind of need the weekend to sort of refresh. So I think that to me tells me that I did my best. I am trying to do things in my job that I haven't had to do really in the past, you know, and that's like I'm trying to get like an entire project move forward that where a lot of things are just outside of my control, and trying to, oh, you son of a gun, the fact that he does all these blue ones, it always, oh, no, that's a nice Error. I like that error. So it's saying that it's trying to set size on something that is undefined. So this is such good news. This is so far. So that means the whole unit test worked, and it actually failed because of a problem with the unit test. So I wonder what happens if I put a question mark right here. It says, hey, I can't find a DOM element. So I feel like if I get a renderer that doesn't exist, I just want it to just do nothing. Because, see, this is going to happen because at some point I'm going to have a way to bring things in from outside, and thing will get um, this thing will get a renderer that just doesn't exist. And I don't know at this point exactly what I want it to do, but I know I don't want it to break. Um, I don't know if that will prevent it from ever going in here. But this is what we're supposed to be doing with unit tests, not what we were doing before of just trying to get the damn thing to run. Now we're actually doing it. And it looks like it's dead again. Jim, I think it's dead. Let's see. Well, I'll tell you, reading the history of bankruptcy for my paralegal bankruptcy thing makes you feel pretty like, oh man, we might be in some weird places in this country right now. In the United States. Yes. All right. So now it's saying, hey, I don't know how to get into this branch. So it looks like we do need to actually create. So I think this is doing what I want to do if something comes in. I just don't want it to break. I think I might want to say if, like, maybe set something in the future that says, like, else render doesn't exist or whatever, and then have it put something in there instead of, that instead of an animation, it has like a little note that says, hey, you need to do XYZ or something like that, and add logic. But the problem is the thing that I'm trying to deal with is doesn't exist yet. So the problem, so I don't know exactly how to code it, and I don't want to write code for that now, but I do want to get to 100%. So I do like this first test, which is should create a viz component even if a visualization does not exist. And then I want to add another one in here that says when a visualization exists. And this, my friends, while it has been probably the most frustrating unit test experience because the shit just didn't work, it is also the most valuable unit test that I've done so far because it did point out that, hey, you are going to have times when this thing needs to do something and the visualization doesn't actually exist. And the thing that I'm thinking of, because what I want to do next, or one of the things I want to do, is have like a way to edit. And one of the things I want to be able to edit is the actual JSON directly. And the reason I want to do that is so that I could copy out a JSON, put it in a file, and then the next time I come up, I can paste that back in and have it. When I paste that back in, that visualization doesn't exist. So that means that I will need to have some sort of like a button or something that shows up that you push, and then when that button gets pushed, it um, when that button gets pushed, the then the visualization gets created or something like that. I'm going to come up with something. I can't think of what it is right now because I don't have the problem in front of me, and I'm going to want it to be cool, and I can't think of anything cool right now. So because I don't have the problem in front of me. Once I have the problem in front of me and I can actually play with it, I'll be able to do that. But that's way down the line, right? Next is to try to standardize the way the animation works. And then after that is to add a way to add these animations and add some code that knows how to place these animations where they go, and then add the animations, and then finally I'll be able to edit the animations. So like we are 4 or 5 iterations of things that I want to do away from having that. Um, so I want to, but basically what I'm going to need to do is create a get a copy of. Okay, so right now, okay, so let's just think in. Let's try to explain. Let's try to explain mostly to my brain in human language where we're at. Where we're at is we have a we have this visualization. The concept in this little thing or in this little test, the concept of the visualization services don't exist. And since the visualization services don't exist, they don't have an ID. And since they don't have an ID, um, then that means that when I pass in this ID of one up here, it has no way of, it can't find one. And so we did create one, as a matter of fact, while we're here, I can go over here and we can just validate what I just said. Um, yeah, see, it's this one. 70% of statements are called, and 70% of lines are called. So if we click in here, like there is no render view child native element. Like basically the st render, it went to st render and tried to get an ID, but that ID doesn't exist. So what we need to do is we need to create a renderer service. And I believe the way that will work is if I create a renderer service here, it'll be the exact same renderer service that exists over here. And then I could say create a renderer, and I can get and it'll return the ID. Now the problem is I need that to be one because I have no way of auto, automatically doing that. So I don't know if I believe I can create a renderer. I believe my renderer service lets me create. Now I'm a ST renderer service, but this renderer service I believe will let me create a renderer. Yeah, and I pass it an ID. So I can pass it one, and then this thing will get a renderer, which is from the renderer service. But see, I also, the problem is I need my ST renderer to also have that same ID. And the problem is that I don't think my ST renderer service lets me create a renderer for an ID. And so here's a really good example of where I'm going to end up. See, like I could only create a base renderer, but I can't force an ID. And so I really need to be able to, because of unit tests, only because of unit tests, I really need to be able to, in an intelligent way, create a base renderer by an ID. So I need to make like the ID like optional. Um, and then like if I do get one, see, because the problem, okay, so the problem that we're facing here is that in here we have to set the ID. We have to manually set the ID. We don't have any way of setting this ID after everything's bit. And the reason is because this thing's a signal and we don't know how to create a signal um, to, to, to pass to this thing. So our render ID is 1. But the problem is that this line of code here, this viz component, is going to die if there is no render ID. It won't be able to render, actually call the render. And so I need like some way of, and that maybe this isn't the best way to do it, but we're kind of being forced. I feel like I'm being forced to create some way to actually hard code what the render ID is. And that might make actual sense. Because if I do like an import, maybe I want to enforce reusing the ID. But the problem is, what if that ID is already being used by something else? And so maybe that's what I'll do. Yeah, that's actually what I'll do. And see, here's another good example of why you build unit tests. And like I'm kind of selling myself on this. Like, let's say I'm bringing up the application and I'm going to just do an import. And I basically want it to be just like, and I'm importing something and I want it to be exactly like last time. Well, then, and I haven't done anything. Like I have not created anything at all. Then, what would happen is, what I would want to happen is that it would actually use the same IDs and everything. And that's the STIDs. I don't care about the ThreeJS IDs. It'll use the exact same IDs, and then, and that would be the full-blown import. But if I don't, but if I already had, like if I had already built a bunch of stuff, then I would want to import it with the ID and then like kind of, I guess, throw an error saying, or saying sorry, that ID already exists, or maybe create a new one but check to see if that ID is already being used. If it's already being used, then return the ID that I actually used. I don't know exactly how I want to do that, but it does seem like I should add like an ID here, and then just say if ID is, and say the ID can be a number or undefined. And I think that will work. Let's see if other things break when I save this. And it's upset because every place where I'm already using it. So I don't want to require that I put something in there. So let's just say equals 0. So if you don't send it anything, then the number will be 0. And then I'll basically say if ID is equal to 0, let's use -1. If ID is equal to -1, then we'll create our render ID. And if not, we'll use the render ID. If not, and it hasn't already been used, then we'll create the renderer ID. Actually, it seems like if not, yeah. Get paste renderer. It Is that right? See, maybe not, because yeah, I don't think get base renderer should have this. I think there should be another function that is get empty renderer that takes an ID, and then you'd be able to, yeah. So I think what we want is like get empty renderer. And I guess that would be more like, no, get and so it's kind of forcing us to deal with something that I don't really want to deal with right now. Um, but I guess this is the time to deal with it. And I guess it really should be set empty renderer. So basically what this is going to do is if there happens to be a renderer right now, it's that with that ID, it's going to wipe it out and redo it with an empty renderer that doesn't have any meshes, doesn't have anything in it. And then the assumption is if we're setting an empty renderer that then the user will just start to build it out. And so basically render service, create renderer by ID. And I don't know what happens. I would imagine what will happen if you create a renderer by ID, the one that already exists in the renderer service. What will happen is you'll just get a fresh, it'll overwrite the existing one. So, which, that could be a real problem if we, like if we have multiple renderers on the screen and now I want to import one and I just wiped out the other one. So probably as part of the import, it'll be like, okay, we have one with it. Would you like to create a new one, or would you like to overwrite the existing one? I guess that's what we want to do. But anyways, well, it's 8:42. I have a little bit of time, but I don't think I have enough time to actually build out this whole set empty renderer thing. I do think that is good positive progress, though, that is being caused by the unit tests. So I think the unit tests, while they were a real pain in the butt this time, and they're nowhere near done yet, they were very much, they pointed out some holes that needed to be resolved, and so that is a good thing. Anyways, happy Friday, everybody. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Happy coding. Bye.